Hello everyone! Today we're going to talk about how to create a strong composition in your artwork. Why is it important? Composition helps guide the viewer's eye, set the mood, and make an illustration more impactful. When learning to draw, most people focus on fundamental skills like anatomy, color, and perspective, but composition is what ties everything together. The way objects are arranged on the canvas is what makes an artwork dynamic, engaging, or expressive. Without strong composition, even a technically well-executed piece can feel uninteresting. That's why it's crucial to study not only individual elements but also how they interact within the frame. Let's break down the key principles and see how professional artists use them. It consists of focal point, leading lines, poses and characters, depth and perspective, and lastly, balance and rhythm. Focal point, the main element that should capture the viewer's attention. The focal point depends on the idea of the artwork. If it's a portrait or an illustration of a single character, the face should stand out. But if the character has an important trait, like a signature weapon, then the focus can be placed on that instead. Artists often use color, contrast, and placement to highlight key elements. Next is leading line. These lines guide the viewer's eye throughout the composition. They can be diagonal lines, perspective lines, or even the flow of character's pose. For example, if a character is walking forward, their movement can be emphasized with a tilted body and flowing clothes. Some key elements in this section that we can use in a drawing are active poses. Silhouettes should be easily visible and shouldn't be very overloaded. Poses often have to be dynamic or there should be any kind of movement. Smooth lines of movement, they shouldn't be stiff and make them more asymmetric. Keeping in mind personality of a character is a good point because it will affect their poses too. Tilt the body for the one side or give more movement for hand and fingers. The next is depth and perspective. Using foreground, midground and background creates a sense of space. A large character in the foreground with a blurred background behind them feels more dynamic. Or if you have better idea for illustration, you can utilize props to make more layered things. For example, elements of clothing or hairs that will be on first layer. Balance and a rhythm. A well-balanced composition distributes visual weight evenly. Keeping the balance should be easy if we use triangular composition. If character and background elements made up a triangle, it will be balanced. It should be at least. If all the details are packed into one side of the canvas, the artwork might feel cluttered or unbalanced. Listen. Noticing and fixing unbalanced part in the picture might be more intuitive feelings. Flipping canvas will help to notice mistakes, I think. Also, placing characters or other things and overall camera position makes a huge difference on how illustration look. Let's break down some examples. To understand what makes a composition strong, we will analyze artist's work. Now let's try to analyze someone else's work because it will help us to understand how composition works. Well, what main subject is in this image? Well, we can see this is a portrait of a character and not very much of perspective here used, and you can see that the character is like having a lot of space in this image and background is like just very blurred, very undetailed, but makes the composition of a character stand out. So it makes a big contrast here. Along with this beautiful umbrella, if you check the values, we can see that contrast is working in her favor. So that means that you can utilize the colors and values to make your composition more beautiful. Also, let's break down this illustration by our key composition principles. What did he use here to make this drawing? So the first one is a focal point. Focal point here is obviously on the face. It's not very difficult to point out this. The face is a focal point here, because the first thing you notice in this image is the face of a character and this contrasted eyes, because it's very unique color in this whole image. Every color here is desaturated except these eyes. There is not much of a leading lines because this character standing still and doesn't have much dynamic pose. Triangular composition here is saved because you can see the triangular shape already. So we have two composition principles working here. Of course, we have one more, and it's perspective and depth. You can see that light is going from the sky, light is falling like this. This umbrella is on the mid-ground light that reflects from the ground here to here gives this impression very good, because it's even brighter than the outside of the umbrella, where should actually the light will be. But since the material here is a bit different and there is water here, it will be a bit darker and more saturated. Background, we already noticed that it's very desaturated and blurred. Foreground, you can say the foreground handle of the umbrella and the character is on the foreground, and this part of the umbrella is the foreground too. And this part of umbrella is on the midground. And now let's pick this illustration, because this illustration is so well composed. Very good composition here, because there is a lot of colors in here and a lot of perspective used in here. Very complex composed image, artwork I mean. Well, as you can see here, again, pose is very still here, but he used here a perspective, lots of perspective, and it's 1 point perspective. These lines converging at this point, and this is our horizon line. All of these lines will converge at some point. Buildings on the background, not very detailed. You don't have to detail them, because when you not detail them, things on the foreground, in this case this character, stands out even more. The pose of the character, not dynamic, but it's not static and not symmetric. Legs are not symmetric. A symmetric pose gives a much more greater look to the character. If you're able to use these key principles, you can come up with something like this, or you can guarantee that you'll be this good at coloring and rendering and drawing. At least you'll be doing good compositions. One my subscriber asking what's wrong with his drawing, and he wanted to establish a routine, and he was thinking the problem is in his liner and his anatomy. Maybe there is a case that his anatomy is a bit wrong or something like that, but in my opinion the problem here is the posing also with perspective. We can see that these three characters are not on the same space. She looks like she's just a poster, and these two characters just taking a selfie in front of it. To fix this mistake, we need to establish the perspective and poses with the characters. We have to find horizon line first, eye line in this case, and place the characters more accurately. What did I first did here? I made a border, made the size of the canvas as it was in the original, and started making guidelines. So I started sketching body figures in perspective, since we know it will be in the high angle because of the character on the middle, on the background. I was actually drawing it how it was in the original, and since I made the first body figure, character on the left, I immediately started sketching how she would look, just to make a rough sketch. After I drew the first character, I began drawing the character on the middle. My process of thinking here was drawing the character in this perspective would be not that easy, because character looking from the side and high angle of drawing of a character, and it's not that easy. So I was a bit struggling with the face because I didn't know these characters. I wanted to make them look good every time. Also, I was struggling to draw these characters because, I don't know these characters at all, and names, so there's two. So I have to look up the original drawing of my subscriber to make sure that they look a bit similar, at least. Making sure that all of these look good and they're in this dimension. They should be in the same space, so I wanted to keep the flow of the hair more natural, keeping dynamic feeling. Also, I made this character sitting on a surface, because she would look too short, or the characters up front that taking a selfie will look too tall if she will be standing too. I also drew a cup of coffee or tea, how it was in the original. And also I began to drawing the last character that was on the right side of the image, and this is much more difficult because character, well, he doesn't have like face, so, and also his coat covered all of his body too, and body shape have to be like, well, it's difficult to make sure that his body, I assume this is a guy, will be realistic in this dimension. And I put his other hand in a pocket because I didn't want to draw it. I think it would be much more into the character, since this character don't look like he would be having fun or something like that. In conclusion, composition isn't that difficult once you understand its core principles. Keep experimenting, analyzing, and trying out different layouts. Over time, it will become second nature, and you'll apply composition techniques without even thinking about it. Let me know in the comments which aspect of composition you found most useful. See you in the next video.